In our last video on the sovereign debt, we mentioned that this could take some time because the governments aren't without resources to deal with this issue. What is apparent, though, is that the debt levels are being affected by the interest levels. Think about it this way. They're in deficit. So as if the deficits remain the same, which they're not, then the increase in interest is going to drive up the expenses and make the deficits worse. Look what we saw in Japan. When we added up their debt and divided it by the interest, we found out they're paying about 25 bips for all their debt, from the beginning 30-year all the way down to whatever, 3 months. And now, within whatever, the next 3 to 6 months, that's going to go to 1.5%. So their 217 billion in interest expense could go to $300-400 billion in interest expense. Now, we mentioned that Japan is one of the canaries in the coal mine. The other canary in the coal mine is the UK. And you can see here down at the bottom, leading bond investors have urged Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who's in charge of putting out the UK budget, to cut spending and not only focus on raising taxes. This was September 3, as you can see. And Rachel, on that day, announced that she will not bring out the budget till November 26, which is very late. It's about a month or so behind when they normally announce their budget. So there's going to be 3 months of speculation. So the UK is going to be driven by this budget. We also have the French, and their problem is political too, in the sense that their budget is quote unquote out of control. We'll look at that in a second. And that they have the center, the middle, and then you have the right and the left. The right doesn't want to raise taxes, and the left doesn't want to cut benefits, and so nothing happens, okay? And this is their place that they're at. They can't even pass a budget. And so when you look at the French, they were actually pretty good all the way up until the invention, or not the invention, or the bringing of the euro. And once that came in 2002, French politician calculated with the European Central Bank printing their money, they could spend with impunity, and they have. This line here is amazing to me. The French retirement now averages 25 years. You understand? You're retired for 25 years, okay? And they also spend very high on health infrastructure in the cities. And of course, they have a very big farming budget because they grow most of their own food. So when you look at government spending as a percent of GDP, France is not number one in the world. Micronesia and Kiribati is number one, and of course ahead of them also is Ukraine, which spends 74%, but they're in the middle of a war. So you can see here that France basically is, as a normal country, has the highest government spending of GDP. So something has to go one way or the other, all right? Now, yesterday we saw the charts, and the day before, each video as you go back, we showed how the bond prices are down, the interest rates are up, the 30 years are just kind of going out of control. The 10 years seem to be coming down the last couple of days or so, but we don't know if the governments are buying their debt, all right? That's another thing. Like I said, we don't know how this is all going to work out. But there's also issues in the financial plumbing of Europe that is happening. And this, from now, September, till the end of the year, could have huge implications for all these countries. So they're in a weakened state, all these countries, in regards to their debt. And now this is about to happen. The Dutch pension funds, the largest retirement sector in Europe, is getting set to sell. It's 127 billion of government bonds, all kinds of government bonds. Okay, they buy sovereigns, and this is why. You can see here in the second paragraph that the Dutch pension industry is transitioning from a system in which final payments to pensioners are guaranteed to a defined contribution framework in which employers are only tied to the amount that they put in. This will mean holding much less long-term sovereign debt to back their long-term promises and freeing up more funds to invest in higher returning assets such as equity and credit, private credit. All right? So while some have already switched, Dutch funds managing close to half of the total assets that need to be transferred are set to convert in January. And the strategist at the Dutch bank, Rabobank, says they expect 127 billion in long-term sovereign debt will be sold over the course of this transition. Now look, people talk about this and what's going to happen, but I want to focus on this as a financial plumbing issue, all right? And this last sentence is really that everyone is worried about the European long end of the bond market, and adding that sales may come very quickly at the end of the year, but preemptive trades could be punitive if there are any more delays. And here on this part of the article, they talk about, just like we did the other day, Europe is increasing their defense spending. They need to build out their industries. They have to build out their tech. They are saying that they're going to spend huge amounts of money. Guess what? That affects the long end of the bond. Now, this first paragraph is going to start talking about the financial plumbing issues that the Dutch pension funds, which are by far the largest in the Eurozone, they have used interest rate swaps and government bonds across different time horizons, even over 50 years or more, to match the period over which they must make payouts to their youngest members. My point is this: they have put on financial trades, these swaps, which have to be unwound. Now, do you unwind them before you do it or after you do it? And this is the question that they're asking themselves. And then they're saying, look, there will be a shift away from 50, 40, and 30-year bonds. And the question will be, who will be the buyer? Now, they point out here in the first paragraph that Japanese investors, historically a cornerstone buyer of Eurozone sovereign debt, actually sold down their holdings at the end of last year at the fastest pace in a decade. And given what we know that the Japanese have been going through with their dollar swap agreements every single day, asking for more and more dollars, they could actually be selling. They could be the people selling these sovereign bonds in Europe, okay? Now they say, that this one Rabobank, the Dutch pension funds have 19% of all government debt in the Netherlands, okay, compared with 8% ownership of the German bunds. Leading into the pension transition, Dutch funds have been increasing their use of hedging through bonds and swaps to protect their members' benefits ratio from any interest rate shock or equity market tumble. And they end this thought where, look, it gives it a difficult dynamic, where on one hand you are incentivized to increase your interest rate hedges going into the transition date, and then after that date, you have to do the opposite trade as fast as possible because you don't want to be the last one out the door. Timing is very uncertain, they're saying. And then everyone is trying to prey on this, says Lynn Graham Taylor, a senior rate strategist at Rabobank, saying that he was forced to focus trying to work out how much are long end rates going to steepen and how much is already in the price. So a couple quick thoughts here. You pick up, so you have your bonds, you put on all your hedges, and now you sell your bonds. Now you got to pick up your legs. This can be very expensive. And notice the word the gentleman used, prayed. All these firms, Morgan, Goldman Sachs, everybody in the world will be out there on the opposite side of this trade and taking all the money that they can. This is not an easy situation.